Peer victimisation can be conceptualised as being the recipient of repeated bullying behaviour. This is an extensive and severe problem with wide-ranging and long-lasting negative consequences. These consequences can extend to a child's social, emotional and cognitive development. This presentation will discuss the impact of peer victimisation on these different themes in turn.
Self-esteem is defined as an individual's evaluation of their own self-worth, which has been recognised to play an important role in a child's development. A child's self-esteem is impacted by their experiences and influential factors surrounding them, including the school environment. Positive self-esteem is considered to serve as a protective factor for children when dealing with emotionally challenging situations. However, if a child lacks in self-esteem, this can lead to detrimental effects such as deficits in their emotional development. Erikson's psychosocial theory proposes that between the ages of 5 and 12, peers are seen as the most significant relationship to the child. He suggests that if the child experiences feelings of inadequacy and inferiority among their peers, it can have a negative impact on their self-esteem. Similarly, studies also suggest that peer acceptance increases self-esteem in middle and late childhood. Therefore, since bullying typically takes place in school where there is a perceived imbalance of power between the involved parties, it is likely that the victim will feel inferior and in turn experience low self-esteem. In support of the psychosocial theory, a recent meta-analysis has established a relationship between peer victimisation and low self-esteem, while on the other hand, identifying that low self-esteem can lead to victimisation as they are less capable of defending themselves and thus attracting bully perpetrators. Therefore, this coincides with early research on this concept of a transactional model. A potential explanation for the low self-esteem and peer victimisation relationship could be in favour of Maslow's argument that basic needs must be met in order to nurture self-esteem. For example, studies have found socioeconomic status to be a predictor for self-esteem in children, where high socioeconomic status was associated with high self-esteem, and low socioeconomic status was linked to low self-esteem. Likewise, socioeconomic status has also been recognised as a predictor for bullying, with results reporting that children from low socioeconomic families were more victimised in comparison to children from middle and high socioeconomic families. Therefore, this suggests that socioeconomic status lays the foundation of self-esteem and can also predict future victimisation. Although this supports Maslow's theory to an extent, it also highlights the limitations in the research which have not accounted for socioeconomic status when measuring self-esteem of victimised children. However, regarding the peer victimisation and self-esteem relationship, there seems to be some differences amongst research. A longitudinal study found that self-esteem of victimised children differed across gender, with boys reporting higher self-esteem in comparison to girls. However, considering the measures were conducted using self-reports, research found self-reports to be influenced by social desirability, which could have confounded the results. Furthermore, it appears that there is a distinction on the effects of traditional bullying and cyberbullying. One study reported that children who experienced traditional bullying found the impacts to be greater as opposed to cyberbullying. However, further research argues the opposite, with findings indicating that cyberbullying was more damaging, especially for male victims. Therefore, this suggests there is a distinction between the forms of bullying and its effects on gender, which researchers also haven't accounted for when examining this relationship. However, in contradiction of this research, Boyle failed to find a significance between victimisation in general and self-esteem, but found a relationship with specific types of bullying such as name-calling or spreading rumours. In relation to that, it's important not to forget that emotional responses to the types of victimisation may differ in victims. For example, it has been found that individuals with higher emotional stability have high self-esteem, which suggests that personality correlates self-esteem, and the inconsistencies found in research can be due to this. Taking into account the studies discussed, the findings highlight the need to re-examine the methodological flaws. Although research will have adapted an ethical approach, However, researchers suggest that vulnerability of a child should be taken into account when conducting research. Therefore, this raises questions as to whether it's ethically appropriate to use self-report measures when a child is in a state of vulnerability due to their low self-esteem. In addition to that, researchers have heavily relied upon self-reports due to it being recognised as the best method for collecting data, while others warn against this as victims may underreport out of shame or social desirability. Although the inconsistencies found in the research can be explained if future research distinguished between the forms of bullying and measured the impacts individually. Furthermore, future research should control for potential variables such as socioeconomic status and incorporating personality skills to establish a causality in this relationship. Although the evidence discussed is sufficient to agree with the transactional method and Maslow's argument, the causality and influences in this relationship still remains unknown.
The student-teacher relationship is vital for victims as the teacher would support them and prevent the bullying. The student-teacher relationship is highlighted by Vygotsky 1934, as he stated that social interaction precedes our development. Vygotsky proposed the principle of the more knowledgeable other, whereby the teacher supports the child with tasks. However, this relationship is disrupted due to victimisation and thus limiting their social skills, which leads into adulthood, such as the inability in social adjustment. Therefore, this section of the presentation will discuss relating literature of how victimisation causes social skill deficits, in particular the student-teacher relationship. Extensive research has shown similar findings in the relationship between victimisation and low social skills. Parent and Perrin found that victims were submissive and withdrawn from peers, and this leads to not being able to develop relationships in the future. Similarly, Fox and Bouton found using teacher reports that victims are rated as having significant social skill problems compared to non-victims. A problem with this study is that it fails to categorise which social skills are most deficit in victims. Doing so would allow us to gain a deeper understanding and develop interventions. A further limitation is the method of using teacher reports and the bias involved. One study revealed that Hispanics and non-Hispanic teachers rated African American students as having significantly higher levels of behavioural problems, compared to achieving low ratings from their African American teachers. One recent study revealed that victims had poor quality relationships with their teachers and thus had low confidence in them too. A limitation of this study is that the male to female ratio isn't stated. Therefore, we do not know if there was equality in gender sample as the most prevalent victims are 13-year-old girls. The use of self-reports is problematic as individuals may not be truthful due to social desirability, leading to invalid data. Therefore, future research should include a social desirability scale to minimise this. A strength of both studies is that they have accounted for different age cohorts. This is important as one study showed age differences, as 11-year-old victims felt less empowered by their teachers and being a victim declined with age. Additionally, the researchers have considered how their findings will bring further awareness into wider society in ways to prevent bullying and support victims in interventions. Although victimisation causes low social skills, other factors contribute. A major factor is a child's attachment to their mother as an infant. The theory of attachment by Bowlby emphasised that secure attachment, whereby the mother is responsive and makes the child feel loved, would then enhance the child's social skills and coping strategies. However, if this attachment is disrupted or non-existent, it is known as avoidant attachment, which leads to consequences in adolescence and adulthood, as a study by Christie found victims demonstrated high levels of insecure attachment compared to non-victims. Bowlby proposed that there can only be one primary caregiver, which is the mother, in providing the secure attachment. However, this has been refuted as one study found combined parental care involving the father leads to greater positive well-being. Additionally, parenting styles also affect social skills. There are many ways future research can be improved. Most current research fails to distinguish between types of victims. Some are aggressive, characterised by impulsivity, whereas others are passive, characterised by non-assertion. Therefore, not all victims possess similar characteristics. Furthermore, most studies haven't established the direct association of victimisation. whether it is victimisation that leads to low social skills or whether low social skills make them a target for victimisation. Therefore, a longitudinal study would be useful in observing social skills pre and post victimisation, or vice versa. Although victims may possess low social skills pre-victimisation, social skill problems increase once victimisation occurs. Overall, the most important aspect of studying victims of bullying is that the ethics are considered by researchers, such as ensuring participants are safely engaged and their dignity is always maintained. Additionally, before undertaking research, certain questions should be posed. For example, whether the certain method used is necessary and if data will benefit victims and wider society. In conclusion, being victimised leads to low social skills as they become withdrawn and have low confidence in others, as does insecure attachment. Furthermore, reflecting upon Vygotsky's theory, poor social relationship of the student-teacher means the teacher is less likely to act as a more knowledgeable other in supporting the child. Overall, low social skills are detrimental as the victim will be unable to form new relationships and have trust issues in the future. However, through enhancing future research methods, interventions can be put in place to prevent bullying and supporting victims affected.
Education plays an important role within a child's cognitive development. Since bullying often occurs within a school context, a number of researchers have suggested that peer victimisation may compromise a child's academic performance. Therefore, this section will critically discuss the research relating to this theme. The link between peer victimisation and academic performance has been the focus of several investigations. Despite this, the mechanisms explaining this relationship are still unclear. Building upon general strain theory and prior research, some studies have proposed theoretical models to explain the mediational processes of this association. For example, one study suggested that students who experience a particular strain, such as victimisation, tend to experience psychological distress as a result. This in turn contributes to a decline in school engagement and ultimately a decrease in academic performance. Despite such compelling research, this model fails to consider a multitude of other factors which have been found to contribute to academic performance. This suggests that mediating factors play a complex role in the association. Therefore, future research is warranted to fully understand their level of contribution to a child's academic performance. Understanding the mechanisms by which victimised students experience academic failure is crucial if schools are to intervene effectively. Alongside the complications of the theoretical models, empirical research has also produced inconsistent patterns. A meta-analysis has found a small but significant negative correlation between peer victimisation and children's achievement. The absence of a strong relationship could be explained by the discrepancies found within research. These discrepancies may reflect the different methodological features used within studies. When reviewing the literature, it is important to consider how constructs are measured within research. Victimisation estimates are typically acquired using self-report measures. However, a meta-analysis has found small effect sizes in studies which utilise this measure. Error can be introduced into the data as results are simply based on a child's interpretation of events and thus are extremely subjective. To eliminate this, one study utilised interviews in which individual researchers assessed whether the harm experienced by the child was deliberate. However, due to the context of the study, there were several ethical restrictions which prevented the measurement of reliable and consistent data. Furthermore, it can be argued that regardless of the harm intended, if the child perceives himself as a victim, they are still suffering with the negative consequences associated with victimisation. In addition to this, there is a lack of consistency in the way researchers classify victimisation. Peer victimisation is typically measured by the frequency with which children are the recipient of bullying behaviour. However, as studies utilise different peer victimisation scales, this frequency varies between studies. For example, in the table presented, it is apparent that the choices available to victims differ drastically, with one simply offering a yes-no response and another a 5-point Likert scale. This is problematic as Ladd et al. Discovered the strength of association between peer victimisation and academic performance differs with the severity of victimisation. For example, he discovered that there was a significant difference in the strength of association between chronic victims compared to low victims. In addition to this, there are inconsistencies in the number of victimisation trajectories identified within research. The differences within research may be explained by these differing criteria used by studies to classify victimisation. For example, the criteria for severe victim may not be the same across studies. Thus, future research should adopt a more objective measure of peer victimisation to ensure consistencies across research. Another construct to be considered in this association is academic performance. Academic performance can be measured by a multitude of factors, including GPAs, standardised test scores, and school engagement. Predominantly, academic achievement is used as an indicator of academic performance. However, in some research, teachers may incorporate participation into final classroom grades. Consequently, lower achievement of victims could be the result of classroom behaviours as well as their performance on graded assignments. However, it can be argued that academic achievement does not encompass the negative academic consequences associated with victimisation. Rather, school engagement may be a better predictor, as theoretical models suggest this mediates a relationship and is more representative of the negative consequences involved. Although, a meta-analysis suggests effect sizes were stronger for studies which employed multi-informants. Therefore, future research should use a combination of assessments to strengthen work. In conclusion, research suggests that peer victimisation and academic performance correlate at the school level. However, there are several inconsistencies. Future research should be conducted into the mechanisms of this relationship for the development of effective bullying interventions. In addition, the field would be moved further forward by using objective measures to assess peer victimisation and academic performance. However, due to the ethical restrictions placed in a school context, this may prevent the development of such measures. Despite discrepancies found in research, the consistent finding that peer victimisation contributes to negative academic performance reinforces the relevance of this theme. To summarise, the negative consequences associated with peer victimisation can extend to a child's social, emotional, and cognitive development. Regarding emotional, research has established a relationship with peer victimisation and self-esteem. However, some confounding variables which could contribute to this association have not been considered within research. Regarding social, research has established that victimisation does lead to social deficits. However, there are confounding factors which may explain this relationship. And finally, regarding cognitive, mediating factors have been used to explain the negative correlation between peer victimisation and academic performance. However, due to inconsistencies between studies, further research is warranted to fully understand this relationship. Despite the theme investigated, it is evident that peer victimisation is a serious concern within the school environment and can lead to several negative consequences.
Due to religious reasons, I was absent at the beginning of the semester. Although I tried to communicate with my group whilst I was away, I felt overwhelmed to come back and see my group not working coherently. This lack of communication continued throughout the weeks, and I feel this impacted our work progression. I attempted to overcome this issue by trying to arrange regular in-person meetings. However, this also became a problem due to members having other commitments. From this experience, I have learnt I need to further develop my ability to resolve conflicting situations. This will improve my productivity in future, especially within a university and work environment.
As a group, we regularly contacted each other via Facebook to address updates in our work. However, there was a lack of meeting up face-to-face due to other group members' important commitments, resulting in delayed progression in the work as important aspects couldn't be discussed. From this, I have learned the importance of management and organisation in group work. In future group work, I will utilise these skills by using my time more effectively in the seminar where all group members are present. In addition, I feel I took on the role of group mediator when challenges arose. However, I need to further develop this skill, particularly for future employment, as this skill is essential in all fields.
Whilst engaging in group work, I found myself naturally falling into the role of group leader. Although I felt most comfortable with this role, it came with its own strengths and limitations. As a leader, I was able to motivate team members and ensure our presentations flowed to reflect group cohesion. However, due to a breakdown in communication, I often found myself dominating discussions. Furthermore, at times, there was an imbalance in contribution of work from other group members, which significantly impacted the dynamics of the group. I believe this caused serious disruption to the progression of our work. From this experience, I have learned that leadership is a difficult skill which I need to further develop, particularly for my future career as a teacher, whereby this skill is extremely important and highly valued by employers.